Everybody, how you doing? Korey here, and yes, it's a little brighter in the room. That means I'm here in the middle of the day, and if I'm doing a recording in the middle of the day, then something special is going down, or someone special is here that I am talking to. And indeed, we do have someone very special here today because this is someone who has contributed to at least a couple of things that I love, and I'm sure will be contributing later on to some things that I would very much enjoy. I have the pleasure of talking to today writer, and I guess you could actually apply the term producer to Mr. Gary Whitta. Gary, how are you?
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
And if you don't know the name, a lot of you do, but if you don't know the name, Gary has contributed to quite a few films out there and even some video games and other properties. But Gary, we're here today to talk about a couple of things that you're working on and a couple of things to promote and some very interesting projects. Now, I'm introducing you. If you'd like to say anything before we get into the discussion, please contribute to your intro if you like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, usually when I'm asked to introduce myself, I usually mention Star Wars first because that's probably the biggest thing that I've been associated with in my career. I was co-writer of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I also was a writer on 2 seasons of the animated series Star Wars Rebels, and I've written kind of Star Wars comic books and books and various things like that. A lot of Star Wars stuff. But I actually got my the thing that kind of broke me into my kind of writing career, and which is still something I'm very well known for, is as the writer of the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. So between those two things, I'd be very surprised if anything ever becomes on my bio, prior to those two. I always say Rogue One and Star Wars and Book of Eli, kind of the things that people know me for. There's a bunch of other stuff as well, but those are the two main ones.
Yeah, I didn't want to lead with Star Wars because you are so much more than Rogue One, as you have just said. But that is one of the things that you have contributed to, and that we're going to talk about later. That I absolutely love. Star Wars Rogue One is, and I'll mention this later, is out of the recent Star Wars movies, it is my favorite Star Wars film. So that's again why it's such an incredible privilege to talk to you.
It's up there for a lot of people. I'm a little bit I always kind of want to poke and prod a little bit when people say it's their favorite, because even I'm like, really, you don't want to talk about Empire Strikes Back? That one's pretty good. But I think certainly of the Disney era, since Disney came in and kind of took over Star Wars, it seems to be Rogue One seems to be one of the ones that has kind of endured, and whenever they do a poll, like what's your favorite Star Wars movie of the Disney era, Rogue One always does very well. So certainly, pleased to see that I was a part of a Star Wars movie that people really have kind of taken to heart and continue to really enjoy. It always pops up trending on Twitter. It's weird. Mm-hmm. Every couple of months, my mentions start blowing up on Twitter. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, oh, Rogue One's trending again. Like, people always like talking about it, I guess.
And first of all, I said out of the current movies, it's going to be very difficult to top Empire Strikes Back, of course. That's everybody's
okay. So
if
you're talking just the current ones, then absolutely, yeah. I think that's a lot of people like Rogue One, and I think that's fine. If you're talking about all of them, like I said, I have had people come up to me and say it's my favorite movie out of all of them, and even I, who worked on Rogue One, I'm like, wait, we got to talk about this for a second. Like, what about the Empire Strikes Back? What about the original Star Wars? I'm a big fan of Return of the Jedi. I mean, I grew up on the original movie, so I love all of the original ones. But no, I mean, obviously, even though I might disagree, I mean, I'm biased anyway, so my opinion kind of counts for less. But the fact that it's even in the conversation, I think, shows that we didn't screw up too badly.
Yeah, you got to give respect to A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, because it's the first. Empire Strikes Back is an incredible movie. That would actually be probably my favorite Star Wars movie. But I'm going to tell you, man, Rogue One goes above Return of the Jedi for me. It's
funny because Return of the Jedi was actually a big influence for me when I was working on Rogue One. It was because I don't know, for some reason Return of the Jedi was the Star Wars movie that really impacted me when I was a kid. Maybe because it was the culmination of everything. It's the end of the trilogy. Felt like the end of the story at that time. Like if they had never made another Star Wars movie, Return of the Jedi would have been like a great ending to the story, right? Everything's kind of wrapped up. Luke, becomes a Jedi, and Vader's redeemed, and we get rid of the Emperor, and the galaxy is saved, and blow up the Death Star again, and everyone's happy. The Ewoks are all dancing around. Like it feels like a good ending, right? And I think because of that, like it really stuck with me when I was a kid, and it was a big reference point when I was working on Rogue One. One of the things I really wanted to try and do was base the big the big space battle at the end. I really wanted to try and put something together that kind of felt like I wanted to feel the way that I felt when I first saw that massive battle at the end of Return of the Jedi, the big capital ships and the little fighters kind of swarming around them, and there's battles happening on the surface and up in orbit, and wanted to try to create something that felt like it evoked that same feeling, like a massive battle that was happening on multiple fronts at once. And I felt like we did a good job with that in the end.
You did a great job at that. And I'm going to kiss your ass a little bit because I'm going to tell you the thing is, sure, no disrespect to the original Star Wars movies. Only thing that I think that you did above Return of the Jedi is that you did take the best parts of Return of the Jedi, if that was your inspiration, and you took out all the cutesy stuff, all the stuff that was there for marketing. You took out all the Muppets and whatnot. And not that I have anything against any of that stuff, because I mean, I grew up, I saw Return of the Jedi 5 times in the theaters when I was a kid. So, no disrespect. But I do think that that's one of the things that people respect about Rogue One, is that Rogue One doesn't feel like it has that corporate marketing hand on it saying that you have to put these things in there to appeal to this demographic and this demographic so that we can sell merchandising outside.
Yeah, it's interesting because Star Wars, I mean, I'd worked on a lot of studio movies prior to that, but it was the first one that I'd worked on that was like like Star Wars, right? Like it's bigger than everything. Like it's Disney, and you're thinking, oh my God, what's this really going to be like? But like what you might imagine, what you were just describing, like marketing getting involved and saying, well, you've got to make sure you have these cutesy characters and you got to check this box and that box. There wasn't really any of that. They really just kind of let certainly at the time that I was working on it, there were other writers that came after me, but there was never any of that kind of interference. Like, make sure you've got this or that. They really just kind of let us kind of go away and write the movie that we believed in. They were very, very supportive of the story that Gareth Edwards, the director, and I were interested in telling, just creatively. Like, just make a good. They were just like, make a good Star Wars movie.
What's it going to take to get you back in there, man? I think they need you right now, Star Wars,
well,
at this moment.
I mean, I don't know. They do. I mean, obviously the films have they're not making any. It doesn't seem like they're making any movies at the moment. But the TV stuff people seem to really, really like. And I know that the fan impression on the movies as a whole has been kind of mixed. But I don't know. I spent in the end, I spent 5 years working in the Star Wars universe. I worked on Rogue One, obviously, and then like I said, it was two seasons of Star Wars Rebels, which is very closely associated with Rogue One, kind of takes place in the same time frame. And then I adapted The Last Jedi as a comic book for Marvel Comics, and then I worked on a couple of Star Wars books that went back and kind of retold kind of stories from the original trilogy era. So I was there for a good 5 years, and my weird little bragging right that came out of that was, unless this has changed, last time I spoke to someone about it, that I believe this was still the case. I don't think even George has ever done this. I'm the only person that's ever written Star Wars for books, television, films, and comics across all those mediums. So it was really, really, it was a lot of fun. Again, as a kid that grew up loving these movies, to actually get to kind of have a hand in, kind of laying the foundation for what will now go on to be the next generation of Star Wars in the Disney era is just this amazing privilege. And whether or not I would ever go back, I mean, like all they would have to do is ask, right? It's Star Wars. It's an impossible thing to say no to, but they now have so many people working on it and so many new writers and so much incredible talent kind of going through their offices. One of the great benefits of working at Lucasfilm, working on Star Wars, is you can get almost anyone to work with you, like any filmmaker, any creative talent, any actor, and any designer, like who doesn't want to work on Star Wars. And so they can have their pick of people that want to work with. So I'm just, rather than thinking about what more can I do, I'm just really grateful for the 5 years and the contribution I was able to make in the time that I did spend there.
No, that's very, and your gratitude is admirable. It really is. I wish we had either you or more writers working on some of the current projects. And we're going to move into your projects right now. Since we're talking about some of the things we're talking about Rogue One. Let's talk about some of the things that have extended from Rogue One. What do you think about the Andor series that's coming out?
I have nothing to do with it. I have no involvement in it. I think neither does Gareth or Chris or a lot of the people that that were kind of the key creatives on the original one. It's So I know very little about it. The weird thing about working on Star Wars is that like once you're done, you're done. I've always said that working on Star Wars or working at Lucasfilm is a little bit like working at the CIA, which is to say that it's a very need to know basis. They only give you the information that you need to know to work on, even though they've got all these kind of projects that overlap and cross over. You only ever get to see the part of it that is relevant to you, right? Like why show you a bunch of stuff just because you're interested in things that aren't anything to do with you, because they're very, very secretive. And I understand why there's tremendous currency in Star Wars leaks and rumors and things like that. So even the people that are kind of like inside the process are generally kind of kept, in their little corner where they only, are exposed to the things that they need to do to work on their part of it. So I don't know anything about it other than I've seen the trailer. I know who's the kind of the main people that are in it. I think it's really, really cool that again Rogue One was deemed interesting and worthy enough that it's getting a spin-off and people want to see more stories from the characters and that corner of the universe. I always thought it was really, really interesting to one of the things that we loved about Rogue One was getting into kind of the nitty gritty of what it was like to be a rebel spy, what it was like to kind of really, kind of work street level intelligence, doing missions and dodging the Empire and that kind of Bourne Identity, crossover vibe with Star Wars. And that was a really, really interesting way to approach Rogue One. So the fact that they're now doubling down on that and doing more of it with the TV show is really interesting. I will watch it when it comes out with everyone else, and I'll know what I think about it after I've seen it.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, it looks great, and I think that's something to really be proud of, to know that this is what you contributed to, as you said, is so interesting and so loved by people that it is still going on, even without your involvement. People still want to see more.
And you see it in all kinds of ways. I mean, the Andor TV series is like one very obvious example of it, because it's a direct spin-off from the movie. But just little things like, for example, like we didn't create the character of Saw Gerrera. He was already established in the Clone Wars animated show, but we kind of brought Saw Gerrera back into Star Wars, the Forrest Whitaker character in Rogue One. When I saw him show up in the video game Jedi Fallen Order, I was like, oh, cool, Saw Gerrera's in that now. And so you plant these seeds that end up kind of continuing to sprout in different ways across, Star Wars media. I think Marvel really, really started this. People love to see these kind of crossover elements, right? Where a character from one thing pops up in another thing, and the idea that these characters kind of all intersect and know each other, and whether it be video games or comic books or TV or films, these characters and associations kind of keep popping up and crossing over from one thing to the next. That's a perpetual source of delight for me. Anytime you see something from Rebels in Rogue One, or you see something from Rogue One in Jedi Fallen Order, or in Andor, or on and on it goes. And I imagine that again, some of the seeds that we planted in Rogue One will continue to sprout, in other media for years to come. It's really cool to watch.
We're talking about Star Wars, but let's switch over and talk about science fiction project that you're working on. An original science fiction project that you created, which I find very interesting. The way you're doing this. If people don't know, Gary is on Twitch a lot, or at least you used to be. I've seen a lot of your streams.
Some might say too much.
Nah, man, no, I don't think anybody can get enough Gary, man. People love you, but you're on Twitch a lot, and I think people love that because you've done all these incredible things, and you seem very accessible to people. But you've now taken advantage of the platform to do this sci-fi project of yours that is going to be broadcast live on Twitch, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. It's called GUNDOG, and I'll try to kind of the potted version of the history of the project. It's kind of a long story behind it, but I wrote a sci-fi novel. I'm a novelist as well. I've written kind of horror and fantasy books and stuff like that, and obviously some Star Wars stuff. And I wrote an original novel last year that I was interested in trying to find a way to kind of bring to market in a different and original way. The book's going to be published. You'll be able to kind of go to Amazon and get it or whatever. But like any book can do that. I was trying to find a way to kind of do something a little bit different. And so I ended up self-producing my own audiobook adaptation because I work in Hollywood. I'm fortunate to know, actors and composers and engineers and people that can help put together a project like that. And during the pandemic, even when we were all kind of, locked up in our houses, we, home studios and home recording and things like that, we were actually able to put together a really amazing kind of audio adaptation of the book on a kind of a shoestring budget. And I think I found an interesting way to kind of put it in front of an audience. As you mentioned, I'm very active on Twitch. I come from a video game background, and that's, kind of Twitch's bread and butter is, watching people play video games. But I've always been interested in trying to find different ways to use that platform and try to find a way to bring ideas and bring original content to people in a different way. A couple of years ago, I had success with a show called Animal Talking, which was basically a live late night talk show that took place inside the Nintendo video game Animal Crossing. And we broadcast that on Twitch, and we had big celebrities come on and live music and comedy and stuff like that. And it was really, really fun. And I think people really responded to it because it wasn't the kind of thing that you typically see on Twitch. But it's changing now, but back then it still was kind of like 99% of what you see on Twitch is people, on camera playing a video game. And that's great. There's a tremendous market for that. But I think Twitch is interested, and I'm certainly interested in finding other ways to use the platform that might be kind of more interesting or a little kind of outside of what you might typically expect. So what we're going to do with GUNDOG, I took the audiobook and chopped it up into kind of 9-hour-long episodes, and we're gonna do a weekly broadcast of it, almost kind of trying to kind of harken back to the old days of kind of radio drama, when families would kind of congregate around the radio to listen to the latest episode of The Shadow or Gunsmoke or Have Gun Will Travel or whatever was kind of the cool radio show at the time. You can kind of recreate that communal listening experience on Twitch now because people are all in the live chat together. And so the idea is that every episode, and we're going to start this pretty soon, we're actually doing a prologue kind of preview broadcast this week, this Wednesday on my channel. And then a couple of weeks after that, we're going to start with episode one, and it'll run for 9 weeks. The idea is for each episode, I'll appear live on camera, much as you see me now. I'm thinking about you. It's almost kind of like masterpiece theater, right? Remember kind of the guy in the smoking jacket and the leather armchair.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to those lengths, but I'll introduce the welcome to, we're going to do kind of show here. Episode 1's coming up in just a moment. I'll introduce you to it. And then we'll run the audio. It's basically a radio show that everyone can kind of listen to communally. And if there's like a surprise or a plot twist or I kill off a character unexpectedly or whatever, everyone in the chat can kind of react to that, communally collectively in real time, which I think will be a really, really fun way to experience something together. Almost like being almost like kind of being at the cinema and everyone kind of laughs or, screams at the same time when you're watching a comedy or a horror movie or something. I think it'd be really fun to experience something collectively. And then at the end of each episode, the idea is that I come back and participate in kind of an author Q&A or a book club or whatever. Like, having listened to the episode, you can then kind of talk to me directly and I'll answer questions and talk about what might be coming up next week. And I think it'll be really fun. We're going to put it on YouTube and on podcast services as well for people that just kind of want to listen to it at their own convenience. But for people who are interested in kind of coming together at an appointed kind of date and time, I think we're doing it like 7 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. You'll be able to kind of sit down with me and with a live audience and listen to an original science fiction drama, which I think it's a really, really fun way, I think, to kind of bring an original story to an audience in a different way. And I tell you what I like about it the most is I don't have to ask anyone else's money or permission to do it. Usually when you're making a big budget movie or whatever, you never know what's going to happen next because producers come in and maybe you get fired or maybe you get replaced or maybe the movie gets canceled. You never quite know what's going to happen because the process is out of your control. Unless you're the one writing the $50 million check to make the very expensive science fiction movie, you're not really in control of the process. Because I was able to do this all myself and it's my own thing. I created it, so I own all the IP, the copyright, the trademarks, it all belongs to me. And because I don't need anyone to distribute it, we're doing it through Twitch and YouTube and podcast services, and I'm going to self-publish the book. I get to kind of set the terms for it and decide what this is going to be, how people are going to see it, whether or not I'm not making any money from it. I'm just doing it as a fun experiment. It's all going to be free. We'll give everything away for free on YouTube and via Twitch and via podcast services, no advertising or anything. It's just a really interesting way to be able to bring a story to market, like on my own terms, without having to worry about is someone else going to change it or mess around with it, or what are they going to do with it? I get to kind of call all the shots. So I don't know how it's going to go. Like I said, Twitch has never really been used in this way before, but I think that's kind of what's fun about it. Twitch is being very, very supportive of it. They're putting it on their front page for the premiere broadcast because I think they're interested in showcasing Twitch as, again, I think they really want to showcase Twitch as a platform, not just for people playing video games, although that is very much their bread and butter, but musicians and comedy and people doing like experimental forms of content on Twitch. I think they're really trying to kind of grow and broaden the platform in terms of what you can expect when you go there. And someone like me, who has I've done Star Wars and I've done big Hollywood movies, who's now bringing their next project exclusively to Twitch as a live premiere, I think is a really interesting way to use the platform. It's an interesting way to kind of debut a new piece of storytelling. And like I said, I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to have fun finding out.
Twitch has been actually pretty good about that. They've even encouraged us. We do sort of a talk show format, as you can see our set and everything behind us, and they've been actually pretty cool about saying, "Hey, we want to expand beyond video games and try this, try that." And they've been good about that. Do you mind if I actually play the promotional trailer here?
We did a little teaser trailer. Yeah, go ahead. We have so just to kind of tee this up. So we have with some amazing talent involved. Shannon Woodward. I imagine the voice you're going to hear is who very well known from HBO's Westworld. She played one of the main characters on The Last of Us Part 2. She's wonderful. She performed the whole thing, and we have incredible music by Austin Wintory, who is one of the best known composers in the video game business. Is a Grammy nominated, BAFTA-winning composer, doing a bunch of Netflix projects right now, and he wrote all the original music for it. So we've got some really, really cool talent for this project, which I think is hinted at just a little bit in the teaser trailer that we did.
Yeah, and I have that queued up right now. This will definitely give you a little bit of an idea of the performance behind this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the teaser for Gary's upcoming project on Twitch, GUNDOG.
GUNDOG.
Much of our history is lost. But here's what I know. They came to us in peace, offering a new future for our people, our planet, asking little in return. Then came the war. Some believe that one day, our time will come to take back our planet. My name is Dakota Bregman. That's it. That's all I know.
So, Gary, I gotta ask you, man. This is I think this is really cool what you're doing, because anybody could, take this to a podcast platform or whatever and put it up there in the traditional way.
Yeah,
I like the way you describe how you're bringing this back to a more serialized radio form of entertainment right here, which a lot of the audience on Twitch don't even know anything about that. You know what I mean? They know podcasts and whatnot, but everything's going around full circle. People are using advertising like they used to do in radio. We're doing a talk show format like this, and whatnot. So for those people who are going to be, especially for the younger people who are going to be tuning into this, I'm curious myself, how is this going to be presented? I mean, because Twitch is such a visual platform. You're talking about how you want to bring the format of a radio drama to Twitch. So are people going to be able to see any kind of visual at all? Like maybe the performer performing?
Yeah, so that's what's going to be interesting about it. I mean, because the Twitch version of this is so experimental, we're not doing it, like only on Twitch. Like I said, there'll be a podcast version. In fact, you can go to gundogpodcast.com and there's buttons there to sign up for, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, whatever, Google Podcasts, whatever podcast service you may use. There's a traditional podcast version of it that you'll be able to get, and all the episodes will be archived on YouTube as well. But for Twitch, like you said, there is a visual component. Like once I'm done with the intro and we switch over to the audio component, what does that actually look like? I mean, at that point, if you wanted to, you could turn away from the screen entirely and just kind of close your eyes and listen to the audio. But there is obviously there's a live chat that people can participate in, so you can look at the chat. And then in terms of what's on the main screen, basically it's just kind of there's motion graphics, there's kind of like cool kind of graphics and animation stuff happening in the background, but it really is just so that there's something on the, there's a screen in front of you, right? So there needs to be something on the screen, but there's some information up on the screen for people who show up at Twitch, like, what the hell is this? What's on the screen will basically explain to you what this is. This is a thing called GUNDOG. It's an original, science fiction drama. It's performed by, this person, and here's a bunch of, there's some other information so that you've got just something to look at. But like I said, it's an audio product first and foremost. Like I said, it's radio, it's podcast. So when we do something on YouTube or on Twitch, there is something on the screen, but that's not really what you need to be focused on. You can focus on the live chat, and obviously predominantly you just focus on the audio.
I really want to check this out, man, because I think a lot of people are going to be kind of blown away that you're using Twitch to do this kind of format, and it's going to be a good experiment for other people. You might be creating something completely new that other people might start following, man.
I love doing things that no one's done before, because if even if it's a terrible failure, you kind of go, well, what do you expect? No one knew, and we've learned something. We've learned something new that doesn't work. We'll try something new next time, but maybe it will work. I don't know. Someone's got to be the first to try something new. And I love like I said, I think it's really interesting in that no one's ever published a book this way before, which is when you think about it, technically what we're doing. This is adapted from a book, which will be published later in the fall, but the audio adaptation is actually what comes first, and it's chopped up into these 9 weekly episodes. But once the whole thing is done, you can go onto a podcast service and listen to the whole 9-hour audio book the way that you would if you get one from Audible. The only difference is, instead of like paying $20 for a book from Audible or whatever it costs, like you'll actually get this for free. So it's an interesting way to publish a book that's never been done this way before, on Twitch. And it's an interesting way to use Twitch. Twitch has never been used in this way before. So from both angles, we're in a lot of unexplored territory here. So it's a bit scary, but it's also very exciting. No one's done anything quite like this. And so I won't know for a while whether or not it's been in any way successful once the numbers start rolling in. But I'm excited to do something new, try to use Twitch in a new way. And again, what I love about it the most is that no one can stop me from doing it. I've worked on so many movies, I can't even tell you, over the years, where I poured my heart and soul into a movie, worked on it for a year, 2 years, and then it gets canceled at the last minute because of some corporate decision made by people galaxies above me in terms of their seniority, and there's nothing I can do about it, because when you work in Hollywood, like you're just not in control of your own destiny. At least with this, I am in control of my own destiny. I decide when it goes out. I decide what the format is, where it's going to be available. Is it Wednesday night at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or Thursday night? Whatever I want to do, I get to decide how to portion this thing out, because I don't need anyone's help to do it, right? I'm not relying on anyone else to get this thing in front of an audience. We all live in an age now, and this is why I think this is kind of a golden age for creators, that all the gatekeepers have kind of gone away. If you want to publish a book, you don't need to beg Random House or Penguin or Simon & Schuster to publish your book. You can go to Amazon and publish it directly. And there are, look at Andy Weir's The Martian, look at 50 Shades of Grey. Those were self-published books that went on to become hugely successful blockbusters. They made big movies out of them. If you want to be a TV star, right? You don't have to worry. Oh, you want to do your own talk show? You can now just go on YouTube, and obviously we've seen in the last few years some of the biggest celebrities and some of the most well-known people in our kind of current kind of pop culture age are people that have come out of YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram, and it's been amazing to see like a whole new generation of talent and a whole new generation of new types of content emerge, because we don't have to go through the traditional channels of linear network broadcast television or a movie that's being played in theaters. You can go, we've all got movie studios in our pocket, right? You can take your iPhone, and for almost no money at all, you can go make a movie that would actually, if you know what you're doing, would actually look pretty amazing. Steven Soderbergh shot 3 movies on an iPhone now, and they all look incredible. So you can, the tools are there for you to do it, and I think that's the most from my point of view, that's the most impressive thing. The coolest thing about this new generation of technology and the internet age that we live in now is I think it's taken the shackles off and it's liberated a whole new generation of creators who can go out and make movies and make music and make comedy, make original storytelling, do whatever they want, just with the tools in their living room, the tools in their pocket, and then upload it to YouTube. And again, if it's good, people will find it. I'm a firm believer that the cream always floats to the top. And if you create something that's really worthwhile and really good, the internet will, only takes one person, with a big following to go, oh, this thing's really cool, and they retweet it, and the next thing you know, it's the next big thing. So I think that's incredible. I love that part of the age that we live in right now.
But you're still working for other people out there, man. And that's cool. You seem to have a good balance because hey, listen, you're saying everything that I love, and I tell people all the time. There are no gatekeepers out there anymore that can keep you from doing what you want to do. Especially I appreciate that as a person of color because I've always sat back and thought like, no one wants to. They're very careful if they want to represent me or put anything of me out there. So if nobody appreciates this more than I do, but you are very lucky to still be able to work with some big companies out there. One of the things that you are also promoting right now, you are writing for Batman Fortress. Which is a series. Now, let me see if I got this right, because I read the synopsis. I haven't read the book yet, but I know it's already out at the moment. Some very interesting things going on with this that I want to ask you about. But this is about where alien ship comes down. It's threatening global powers on Earth, throwing Earth all in disarray. And usually Superman comes down. He's like, all right, I got this. Don't worry about it. But Superman is gone. So now Batman. He's like, here, I got to take care of shit again. So now he's out there getting the Justice League together to go ahead and stop this alien force. One of the things that's interesting with this, though, is, and please tell me if what you want to add to this after I'm done, but one of the interesting things that I've read about this is that you are going to see different sides of Superman that we probably haven't seen before. And also, this is somewhat maybe political, this book.
I mean, I think all art is political in one way or another. Star Wars is political. Gundog's got some kind of political subtext to it. I think that's part of what makes this stuff interesting and art, and not just kind of like frivolous entertainment. Is you try to have something to say, whether it be politically, socially. You try to have a message that resonates beyond just the action on the page. It can't just be about Batman running around beating people up. There's got to be something more substantial, something to kind of get your teeth into. And yeah, this is another project that I'm really, really glad to be a part of. I've been running comic books for a long time, and got the attention of someone at DC that asked me if I wanted to write a short story for a Joker anthology that they did last year that was very well received. And so they came back and said, would you like to do something bigger, like pitch us an original Batman idea for 2022, because the Matt Reeves movie was coming out, and they wanted there's a lot of Batman stuff that they wanted to do around the Matt Reeves movie. 2022 is kind of the year of Batman at DC, I think. A lot of Batman stuff happening, and so they said pitch us an original Batman idea. And I love Batman, but I like Superman too, so I pitched him an idea that kind of brought Superman into the mix, as you just mentioned. Yeah, the idea is basically a bunch of aliens show up on Earth and start disrupting things, and it's definitely a Superman level threat, right? The kind of Independence Day type problem where you'd expect, if Superman was around, right, that this would be his problem. But he's not around. He's disappeared for reasons that no one quite understands. He's AWOL, and so it falls to Bruce, to Batman, to find a way to kind of combat the alien threat, and also try and figure out where the hell is Superman, because he's disappeared for reasons unknown. And so it was a really, really fun opportunity for me to get to play with all of the characters in the DC toy box. I often think about this, that when I was like 10 years old, and we've all done this, right? We had our Star Wars figures or our DC or our Marvel figures, and we would like put Batman and Superman together and kind of clash them together and make them fight. Or you'd put Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker figures together and kind of bash them together and make them fight when you were a kid. And that's still what I do, but I do it now on a much larger scale, and they pay me for it. Is finding ways to bring these characters into conflict in ways that are interesting and fun for the audience. And so being able to play with all of the characters in the DC toy box, we've got Wonder Woman's in there, Aquaman, Lex Luthor, just not just Batman and Superman. We've got the Green Lanterns, like pretty much every and some of the lesser known DC characters that I've always had a fondness for. DC really did, as I mentioned to you before, like the Lucasfilm people, like, just go nuts, have fun with it. The DC people were the same as well. So all the characters are yours to play with. As long as they had to approve the story, but as it turned out, that happened without any trouble at all. They really liked the story that I pitched them, and I get to write an 8-part original Batman, Superman, Justice League, DC Universe story with my good friend Derek Robertson, who's the artist on it. If you know Derek from anything, you know him as the co-creator of The Boys, which obviously is blowing up on Amazon right now and has been for the past few seasons. And Derek and I are really good friends. We go way back. And the opportunity to work together on an original Batman book has been really, really amazing. So yeah, 8 episodes, or I should say 8 issues. Issue 3 is out this week, is in stores this week, and we'll publish through the rest of the year to get all 8 issues out there. And then, as usual, once that's done, there'll be like what they call the trade paperback, like the graphic novel version that brings them all together into one volume. You'll be able to go out and get the whole story.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask you, first of all, it sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm, you just sold me on it. I'm gonna start reading this. I have a Comixology, so I imagine it's available.
Yeah, it's on Comixology too. Yeah, you can get a whole subscription.
Yeah, I think I will, man. Actually, I know I will. But
I love that. By the way, I remember you used to have to go to the comic store on a Tuesday, and that was fun to do in itself. But now you can just press one button and you'll get a message on your iPad. Hey, here's the new issue of Batman, and it's there on launch day. Right? They just deliver it to you into your app, like right as it ships. I think is amazing.
No, I'm spoiled, man. I'm that creature of convenience. I want my stuff brought to me. I'm that home delivery guy, Grubhub and all that kind of stuff, Amazon. So yeah, I'm the Comixology. I agree with you. It's amazing.
And I think if you like, and I actually really like reading on the colors are really vibrant on an iPad as well. For some reason, like when you read on a screen, I always feel like the colors pop even better than they do on a printed page.
Yeah, I know that there's some purists out there who would, slap us right now if they heard us say that. But
I totally get it. Like, I love the smell of a new comic book, right? I literally do that when I get a new. I literally just had the new issue of Batman Fortress just show up in my office a couple of days ago, and the first thing I did was like open it and give it a good sniff because I just love that because it's fresh from the printer, right? And a comic book will never smell better. It's like a new car smell, but you get new comic smell every month.
Yeah. No, it is a trade-off because I do love the smell of comics. I love the smell of books. I ordered a book that must be like 50 years old from when I was like a kid, man. And I just had this big surge of nostalgia and ordered it. And the first thing I did was like I opened it up and I treated that book like it was cocaine or something. I just sniffed it, man. I loved it. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But me being a visual person myself, you're right when you say those colors pop on an iPad, man. I actually love that.
I try not to be snooty about it. Like, not everyone, for example, like I'm not a big. It's weird because I'm talking about Gundog, which basically isn't an audiobook as well as a printed book. My wife loves audiobooks. That's how she reads so many audiobooks. But like she's not, when you think about it, she's not technically reading the audiobook. Like someone's reading it to her, but she's still consuming it. And I think there's a lot of snobbishness about there about whether you're an audiobook reader or a print book reader or whether you read comics on digital or in print. As long as you're reading this, this is again the kind of gatekeeping that I find really annoying. As long as there's no entry level, there's no like shibboleth or there's no test like, oh, you're a Star Wars fan, like name 10 characters that aren't in the original trilogy or whatever in order to like prove your worth as a fan. I hate that kind of stuff. Like if you're a fan of it, you're a fan of it, and that you can express that in any way you want.
No, again, 100%. I think that we've learned now that a lot of the I remember I was around the 90s. When they were talking about the internet was saying, oh, that's going to allow the geeks to rule the earth, until we found out that a lot of geeks are kind of assholes, man. So
I mean, so I was talking earlier about what a great gift the internet has been to people that want to create content, right? And it's true. It really is amazing. I wish it had been around when I was starting out. I think it would have made my journey a lot easier. But yeah, there's always the other side of it, right? We've seen a lot of toxicity, a lot of negativity, and it's gotten to the point where, like, I don't even read a lot of it anymore. Like, I want to hear what people think of my work, but when there's toxicity involved, I just tune it out right away because, like, who needs it? Like, we work really hard on this stuff, and when when there are a certain contingent of fans that only want to complain or, just kind of say mean stuff. I don't think it helps the conversation at all. And to me, it's heartbreaking that stuff is out there. But, that's the nature, I guess, of a free and open society and a free and open internet, is that everyone, gets to say what they think. And I'm a big fan of constructive criticism, but so much of the stuff out there now is not constructive and is really just kind of mean-spirited, that I feel like anytime you go on the internet, especially as a creator, to see how people are reacting to something that you've made and put out into the world, it can be a real minefield.
Yeah. It's, I want to ask you about your book here, continuing on with the comic you're writing right now, man, Batman Fortress. I'd asked you earlier about the political aspects of the book, and I haven't read it yet. But I do know, I've read a story before I even talked to you about how Lex Luthor is a Republican in the comic.
Yes.
And
he is.
And I didn't know if that was like something that played, if it played heavy to where it was tying into some of the political stories and situations we got going on in real life, or if it's just mentioned in passing.
So I think by the time that people are reading or listening to this podcast, the issue will be out, because it comes out tomorrow as we're recording this. So I don't think it's a big surprise. At this point, we're not, giving anything away. The comic's going to be out. But as I'm sure you know, like, there's been many times in the history of DC, Lex Luthor has been president of the United States.
Yeah.
Right? That's a well-established version of Luthor, right? I mean, there are other storylines where he's not, but President Lex Luthor is not a new idea, right? He's been the president before. And so I thought it'd be fun to have him be the president in this version. It actually helps the story a little bit, because Batman, in Superman's absence, Batman needs the help of someone who's got a lot of resources, and Lex Luthor is that guy. And as much as it might stick in Batman's throat to have to go ask Lex Luthor, one of the greatest villains in the DC universe, for help, they are kind of forced to join forces to try and figure out what's happened to Superman and fight off these aliens. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to kind of create some character conflict, right? To have one of the most famous heroes in the DC universe and one of the most famous villains in the DC universe kind of forced by circumstance to team up in, even though they would never, really want to work together. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. But no, so there's a scene in issue 3 where he mentions just in passing that he's Republican. And I'm actually interested that you've already, I don't know if this is something that's already shown up on the internet, because the issue's not even out yet. So I don't know what it is that you've even seen or are responding to right now. But I remember writing it thinking, is this going to annoy people? I don't know. Who cares? I don't really care if it annoys certain people or not. I feel like Lex Luthor would be a Republican. Don't you? Like, you really think? I don't
very much so. Yeah, of course.
Not just because I'm not saying because he's a bad guy and Republicans are bad guys. Just because like he's so typical of like so many of the other, kind of Republican figure or right-wing figures that you see both in politics and business, whether it be Elon Musk, whether it be Donald Trump, big, successful, business people that have then gotten involved one way or another in politics. I don't know. It just seemed like the right fit to me.
Yeah, no. I mean, if nothing else, he'll be a fiscal Republican. He just loves money. His business interests would be looked out by that party, I think he'd feel. So, yeah.
Very, very much a fiscal conservative. And it's funny. It's mentioned. I'm thinking about because you've got me thinking about it now. He mentions it in passing, but it's almost he happens to mention it like as a joke. Like, not that it's not real. He is a Republican, but he mentions it. He mentions it by way of making a joke. One of the things that I tried to do with Luthor in this series, and people will start to see it in issue 3 when he shows up for the first time, is just like find the comedy in Luthor. I always feel like the Gene Hackman version of Lex Luthor will always be my favorite version, and they played him largely for comedy. And I always thought the genius of that version of Lex Luthor was like he was really funny right up to the point where he wasn't, and you realize, oh shit, no, he's actually evil. Like, he's funny, but he's really evil as well. And so I really tried to kind of lean into some of the comedy of Luthor. There's a lot of the comedy of Fortress comes from the interplay between Batman and Luthor, because obviously they really don't see eye to eye. No, it's interesting you mentioned it, because there was a bit of political. There was some people didn't like something that I did in issue 1 that was perceived as very political, and whether or not Luthor has been specifically cast as a Republican or not in previous iterations as president of the United States, I don't know. But I specifically mentioned, yes, he's a Republican in Batman Fortress. Whether or not people on certain sides of the political spectrum will have a reaction to that, I don't know. It just kind of felt like the right character choice for me. If you were asking like 100 DC fans, President Lex Luthor, which party do you think he is? I don't know. I kind of feel like more people would say Republican than Democrat.
Oh, for sure, definitely. I think most people would. Unless you decide to like write him against type and expectations and make him an interesting Democrat.
You could do a completely different version of Lex Luthor, yeah. And again, it's not that he's a bad guy. It's really just his background. Again, like a kind of a big kind of business titan that went into politics. I kind of feel like historically there are potentially more examples of that coming out of the Republican world than there are the Democratic world. But I really don't want to get bogged down too much in the political conversation. But I think it's also an interesting conversation to have. I think about like when you start to kind of delve into the what are the politics of some well-known characters, and when you write a version of Luthor who is the president of the United States, which is obviously inherently a political job that he's doing. I happen to mention kind of which party he was a member of. So we'll see how people respond to that when the issue comes out tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it'll be very interesting. And it was an article that came out yesterday that I had read. So
okay,
yeah. So there's stuff they already put down spoilers. So sorry if I said something.
Oh, I'm sure the floodgates will open tomorrow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hey, I want to kind of bounce back to something that you were talking about that was very interesting, which is, we were talking about how you have the freedom to do whatever you want to do with this project, GUNDOG, on Twitch, and you don't have to have any kind of corporate interference. You don't have to have the project yanked from under you. You got complete freedom. I know that you were working on the Mouse Guard, which is an incredible looking project that was actually shut down 2 weeks before they went into production. And you can't see this, but I'm showing people some of the work that was, I guess, some of the concept animation that was done for this. It's like a 9-minute presentation. I'm showing people this. It looked incredible. And, there's a quote from you that you put out where you were very blunt about how you felt about this being shut down.
God, what did I say?
You said, okay, so I'm going to read this. This is like a tweet that you sent out. It says, "When I was tweeting recently about abandoned projects, I didn't include this one because it's still too painful. Probably my favorite thing I've ever written, poured my heart and soul into it. Everybody loved it. Ripped my guts out when it got shit canned." And you put a big ugh at the end of that.
Yeah, I mean that's how it felt. Mouse Guard is a comic book that I deeply love, and I did pour my heart into writing the feature film version. There was another writer that came on after me, a guy called T.S. Nowlin, but I was kind of the first writer on. And the director Wes Ball was doing an amazing job of putting it together. Idris Elba, Andy Serkis, $40 million invested in pre-production. Like they were making that movie until they weren't. And I guess what happened was Disney bought 20th Century Fox and took inventory of like the movies that were currently in pre-production, just decided that they weren't going to go forward with that after all. And even though it was only a few weeks from production, it really taught me, I've learned this in the past, but this was probably the kind of like the lesson in it that gave me the most clarity was like, it's never a finished film until you're standing on the red carpet and the check didn't bounce. You just never know what is going to happen. And again, that was a perfect example of, it wasn't because people didn't like the script. It wasn't because it wasn't anything that I did. It was simply kind of a corporate decision that was made way above me, that they just didn't want to, that it didn't fit their new kind of corporate plan to make that movie at that time. And so all that work, not just my work, but T.S. Nowlin's work, Wes Ball's work, all of the work of the people in the costume department, everything they were doing to get that movie ready to go, all wasted, all just kind of like thrown away and you'll never see that movie. And it is heartbreaking. And I think that probably was kind of the tipping point that led me to start thinking, look, I'm still going to continue to do studio movies. I'm doing like 3 of them right now, where I'm not in control of my own destiny, but I'm being very well paid, to write a movie for a studio. And all I can do is, cross my fingers and hope that, everything converges in such a way that the movie will actually get made. But I don't have any authority over whether it does get made or what it actually looks like when it finally does get made. I'm not the director. I don't have final cut. I'm not the studio executive. I don't decide what the movie actually looks like when it comes out. I'm very, very low on the totem pole in terms of those big creative decisions. And so what happened with Mouse Guard and what has happened with many other projects I've worked on over the years, I think has what kind of cumulatively has led me to wanted to try and find ways to bring projects to an audience. Like I said, do it in a cheaper way. Like do it as a comic book, do it as a novel, do it as a podcast. Like if there's a way that you can put something together where you can scrape together like a small enough budget to do it on your own terms, and you don't have to worry about ceding control to someone else because they came in and wrote the check to make it possible. As you know, the gold rule is who has the gold makes the rules. And as soon as someone else kind of assumes financial responsibility for a project, they also are, they're essentially in control of it, right? Because they're spending the money. And that I wouldn't have it any other way. That's how it should be. I just don't always want to have to cede authority to those people, when if there's a way for me to do it, keep it all in house, spend just a little bit of money of my own, not too much. Gundog costs very little money to make. We rented some studio time and things like that, and some artists worked on it that I paid. But like for the most part, it was really just a few of us got together. That trailer that you heard, Shannon recorded that like under her bed, like under her comforter, into her iPhone. Like we did it all very, very kind of lo-fi, kind of the cheapest way to do it possible. Then we found ways to make it sound really good later. There are ways to do it. There are ways to, like what did Robert Rodriguez made on Mariachi for like, what, $7,000. You can do it. Like you can make things for very little money and they can still be good, and you own it and you control it. And that to me is increasingly important. If I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time trying to make things because I'm constantly like, oh my God, every time the phone rings, oh, is this the project being canceled? With Gundog, I never have to worry about that because there's no one that can call me and tell me that, right? It's just me.
So, you talk about the contrast between working on your projects and the freedom that you enjoy. And then you talk about working with Hollywood. And even though, you say, hey, I'm still working on, big productions. I'm still working on big movies. I'm still writing for these films. You talk about, with Mouse Guard, how it kind of broke your heart to not be able to work on that or see that come to fruition. Even with Rogue One, which you talk fondly of, you amicably left that project at one time. I can ask you why you left Rogue One, but also, you go work on these movies and you get your money, and I imagine it's good money, but has all of this experience of seeing productions shut down, not having control over these things, being as you say, the low person on the totem pole, has this in any way kind of bittered you from working with Hollywood?
No, like I said, I'm still doing it. I've just tried to find ways to diversify. Hollywood still pays the bills for me, and like I said, the fact that I'm very well compensated financially for working on these movies does at least kind of take the sting out of it a little bit, at least when these things go sideways. But ultimately, the greatest satisfaction for me comes from seeing something that I envisioned finding its way in front of an audience the way I originally imagined it. Like, this is the version of the story that I wanted to tell, and the audience is seeing it that way. It's very difficult to do that in Hollywood because, again, movies cost a lot of money to make, and the more money people spend on movies, the more averse to risk they become. They don't want to lose their money, and of course I understand that. So it's a little bit of both. Like it's I'll do. Again, I can't talk about what I'm working on right now, but I'll do the studio movies that I'm working on that I'm being well paid for, but which I have no, authority over whether or not they'll ever come out or what they'll look like when they do come out. If I get totally rewritten or replaced, I don't know. That's not up to me. But again, at least I'm getting well paid. But on the other side, I'll have, whether it be Gundog or something else that I'm working on that I'm probably not going to make any money on, but I didn't spend any money on it either. And I completely control it, and it's a fun experiment. So I get creative satisfaction from doing that. So until there's a way to somehow get like commercial and creative satisfaction together, I just kind of do them as separate projects.
No, that's cool, and you answered actually a lot of questions I had regarding how you work and your relationship with Hollywood. A couple of other things right here, and then we'll be able to wrap this up.
Sure.
You are such a prolific writer, and you work on a lot of projects. One of the other things that you worked on that I absolutely loved was Telltale's The Walking Dead. You said, I think you worked on 2 episodes of that. I know one is walking around every corner, I believe is what it is.
Around every corner.
Around
Episode
every corner,
4
yeah.
of season 1, I wrote that episode, and I was also creative consultant on all of season 1, and I wrote some of the 400 days DLC that they did after season 1 as well.
You know, we talked about how it is to work on, you know, your projects, your books. We talked about how it is to work on the comics. You seem to have a little bit more control over that. What's the difference between working on writing for a video game and writing for a movie?
I mean, it really depends on the video game. If you look at something like The Last of Us, right, which is essentially kind of a movie that you play, right? It's a terrific video game, but the story is kind of passed out in little kind of cutscenes, and and people on YouTube have done this, right? They've cut all the cutscenes together and made it just a movie that you can watch, right? But it's just there's one movie, it's one story with one ending. You don't really have any agency in the storytelling part of it to define like how the story is gonna end, right? The story that you are told is the story that Neil Druckmann and his team wanted to tell you. And that's and in that regard, that to me is not terribly different than writing a movie. But if you're working on something like, for example, The Walking Dead or The Quarry that just came out, which is like non-linear and has a lot of or, you know, As Dusk Falls, another story game that just came out, where there's a lot of, you know, more kind of choose your own adventure, right? Do you want to try and grab the gun, or do you want to talk the guy down, you know, that kind of stuff? Or do you want to go down into the scary basement, or, you know, call the cops, like all those kind of things. And the choices that you make define how the story is going to play out, who lives and who dies, whether people like your character or dislike them, you know, whether you ultimately succeed, what kind of ending you experience. That was my experience working on The Walking Dead, is that kind of a game, that kind of experience, kind of the branching story that you as a player kind of define. That's very different. Because you're not just writing one version of the story, right? You think about it, like every single permutation of the story that can possibly play out based on the choices that the player makes at each juncture. They all have to be valid. They all have to make sense. At no point do you want like the game or the story to kind of logically collapse in on itself because you didn't think things through. Like it's a much more complicated and technical process. Like the script actually kind of looks like a very complex flow chart. Or a kind of a logic diagram where you're trying to, if this happened, you know, back in scene 53, then, you know, these are the options that will be presented to the player in kind of scene 87, and far more complicated, in fact, even than that, and like massively it's simplifying it. So it really depends on the, and because there are other kind of games that don't really conform to either of those types. There's so much, what I think is so interesting about storytelling in video games right now is there's so many different ways to do it. Right? Like when you think about a film or a television show, there's experimental cinema, sure. And we've seen television shows that kind of deviate from the norm as well. But like when you sit down in front of a TV show on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, you know roughly what to expect in terms of how the story is going to be told to you. But in video games, because it's still kind of an emergent, you know, art form, video games are still relatively new. Certainly storytelling, we're still, I think, very much in kind of the early days of figuring out like how best to present story in an interactive way. There's a lot more experimentation and a lot more kind of weird and wonderful stuff happening where, you know, I could, you know, if I spent like half an hour, I could come back to you with a list of like 10 games that all tell really interesting stories, but each one does it in a radically different way that is nothing like any of the other 9. And that's really, really interesting. And it's one of the reasons why I love playing those kind of games. It's also one of the reasons why I don't really enjoy working on them, because it's so much hard work. When you work on one of those branching narratives like The Walking Dead, you have all of the same burdens that you have with a typical piece of storytelling, you know, like a film or a television show. Characters have to be interesting. The plot has to maintain your interest. There have to be stakes. You have to care about what's going to happen. There has to be emotional investment. You know, you have to keep the audience engaged all the time. But then on top of that, you have to add the player agency and give them the ability to kind of take the story down, you know, any path they want to take it down. But you still have to keep them interested, even though they may make choices where they don't like the outcome. Much more difficult, much more time consuming, ultimately much more rewarding when you get it right, as, you know, The Walking Dead did. You know, won a lot of awards and people really liked it. But much, much harder. And we're still figuring out how to do it. I often say that we're still kind of in the silent movie era of video game storytelling, because we're still at the beginning of the art form, still kind of figuring out like what are the tools that we can use, what are the techniques we can use to tell, you know, the story to the player in an interesting way where they actually feel like they're a part of it.
And this is just something funny. there's you as a zombie right there. Speaking of The Walking Dead, you made a cameo in The Walking. Are you?
I did. I was a zombie.
Yeah,
in
you
the
were a zombie.
Walking
There
Dead
you
pilot
are.
episode.
And something interesting here, and we're going to close out with this. While we're on the subject of video games, I don't know how many people know this, but I believe you were the editor of PC Gamer magazine.
Yeah, I had a whole career before I got into screenwriting. I worked in the video game industry, and mostly I was editor-in-chief of PC Gamer magazine in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah, I have you right here on Fox News. There's a young Gary Whitta right there.
Oh God, wearing that awful sweater vest thing.
Well, it's too late. I already showed it, man. It's up there.
That awful kind of pudding bowl haircut and that sweater vest. Yeah, that was.
You're still a dapper guy.
They had me on Fox News again. This would have been back in the 90s to talk about violence in video games, and back then, as they still are now, trumpeting this ridiculous line that playing video games can somehow not only compel you to want to go kill people, but actually make you really good at it. The other guy they had on there was an absolute idiot, and I was glad to be able to kind of present, the non-idiotic point of view on that issue. It's sad that 20 years later we're still having the same conversation.
No, it very much is, man. I mean, guns are never the problem. It's always video games and everything else.
Everything but guns, right?
Everything but. I have. Do you mind if I show this? This is like a minute-long clip. I think people would love to see this with you arguing on the behalf of
I can't stop you.
No, you cannot. So since you can't, I'm going to show it anyway. And here it is right here.
Have fun.
When you play a video game, the controllers that you use to play that game, you use the same computer mouse to aim and point the weapon to kill the monsters and the creatures on the screen that you use to control your Excel spreadsheet. Now, Mr. Grossman, I'm sure, is an experienced military man and has fired a real weapon. If he is seriously trying to tell the public that using a computer mouse will enable you to fire a heavy and oily bolt-action rifle or a machine gun, it's absurd. I've been playing these games for 20 years. If you gave me an Uzi or an M16, I would not have a clue what to do with it. I would probably miss every shot on the target. It's an absolute absurdity to assume that games like Doom can be used to train killers. If that was the case, why are we paying millions and millions of dollars for these computer simulations when they could just go to Electronics Boutique and buy Doom for $50 and train the Marine Corps that way? Paula.
Mr. Whitta, we're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Grossman, that's all we have.
Get him, Gary. Get him. Let him know what's up, man.
even though I looked ridiculous and I deeply regret that sweater vest, I remember, I made some pretty decent points. What a silly argument that was back then. Again, that guy was arguing not just that, like, he created like kind of a playing. God, listen. If playing those kind of video games turned you into a killer, I'd probably be like the #1 mass murderer in American history. I've played so many of those games over the years. For 30 years, I've been playing Doom, Quake, Call of Duty Warzone, PUBG, you name it. I went to a shooting range a few years ago and fired a real weapon. I had no idea what I was doing. I was, I was right about that. They did put a real weapon in my hand. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. The idea that playing these first-person shooter video games could not only make you want to kill people, but actually train you to do it, absolutely absurd.
No, very great point, man. And it's funny because, wow, Fox actually gave you the last word right there.
Yeah, probably the last time they ever gave someone on my side of the spectrum the last word.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Imagine trying to get away with that on Tucker Carlson now.
Oh, he would. I've seen clips with Tucker Carlson. When he got owned, he never showed the episode, but he cussed people out because he didn't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's painful. I don't want to get dragged into that side of the conversation, but yeah, it's painful to watch sometimes.
Yeah. No, it just goes to show you how, even back then, Fox being the assholes that they are, how different they were than they are today. Still not as extreme, but still out there. But Gary, you know what? We've been talking for over an hour, man, and I can't tell you how much I enjoyed just sitting here listening to you. This has been
fun.
This has been a treat, man. You are a wealth of knowledge. You are a great storyteller. You are again someone who is very inspirational. You know, everything that you were saying about telling people to go out there and just do it. I always try to push that on our listeners and our viewers. So hey, I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And you've definitely you got me to go get the book now. The two things that Gary was promoting here today, before we leave, and these things are either already out there, they're coming up soon. Look for the serialized audio drama, sci-fi audio drama on Twitch, GUNDOG, and also And comic book stores are, if you're like us and you love comicsology and you just like having it delivered straight to your tablet or phone, you got Batman Fortress out there. And of course, Gary has other projects coming out, and we all do love Rogue One. So Gary, thank you very much, man.
Thank you. Batman Fortress, very easy to find in comic stores and in Comixology. And again, just one last tip on Gundog. Not everyone will be able to make it to the Twitch broadcast. The easiest thing to do is just go to gundogpodcast.com. That's GUNDOG podcast.com. And there's all the various buttons are there for Apple, Spotify, Amazon, whatever service you use. You can click one button, subscribe, and as new episodes come out weekly, they'll drop right into your podcast feed.
You know what? I had that page up right there. I'll go ahead and show it. With garywhitta.podbean.com.
So yeah, but we have a shortcut that's easier than that. If you just go to gundogpodcast.com, it will redirect you to garywhitta.podbean.com, where the podcast is hosted. Trying to make it easy for people.
That's what I did. I put gundog.podcast.com, and then it took me to this page here. So
there you go.
And there it is. You can have all the platforms that you can listen to Gundog on once it.
Try to get it on pretty much all of them. I think we're on all of them.
You are. I'm looking at it right now. So Gary, thank you for spending so much time with me today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I'm gonna cut Gary off over here and in that. And there we go, folks. Thank you for watching me get up and look all unprofessional and lean all over the camera and everything and show you my armpits and stuff. But thank you for being here. Again, I that was cool for me because I just, most of the time you couldn't tell. I'm just sitting over here just listening. I almost forgot to press the button back to me sometimes, or there were times that he would actually finish talking and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd better switch the button over here because he's so interesting. That was, it really was a treat for me to listen to. Very much so, man. It was like I was sitting in a coffee shop just listening to this guy talk. But I love all of you out there too. I wouldn't be able to do that with that guy if you did not make it possible. So please check out this interview. And I'd never do this, man. I'm going to do this right now. Should do this ahead of time. Oh, I want you to see all of our interviews. Double toasted. Let me see. Is it double toasted interviews or DT interviews? I think is what it is. I typed all that out and for nothing, unless I have it wrong. Oh, there we go. No, not at all. I did have it wrong. All right, I should do this ahead of time, but I want you to go to our archives and check out all of the interviews that we have done with people over the past. Just did one last week with a very interesting person. I'll let you go to our YouTube page to see who that is. But tons of people that I have been Oh, there it is right there. I do have the right page. Tons of people that we've been able to interview, that I've been fortunate enough to interview. These have been all very special people to me, and none of them have disappointed at all. So please go check out our interview page on YouTube. Double Toasted Interviews. I had it wrong before. DT Interviews. Don't listen to me, but listen to me. Double Toasted Interviews. Go over there, check it out. Actors, producers, writers, animators that we've had on there, podcasters, all kind of creators, man. I think that page right there is very, very much something that is great creative encouragement for you. So please go check that out. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. But thank you so much again for giving me an opportunity to share this with you today. And remember, I love you so much that you can get a hold of me anytime, whether I'm asleep, whether I'm awake. Just send an email and I'll find it one way or another. kcoolmans@gmail.com. That's KCOOLMANZ@gmail.com. Email us with any kind of questions, comments, compliments, insults, input, and/or advice. Hit us up on the social medias: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I don't have that on there. I should put that on there. But just type in Double Toast of all of those. It should take you where you need to go. Also, if you find yourself here in Austin, Texas, sure would be nice to see your face. So please let us know what your plans are for Austin. Are you moving here? Just passing through? Well, let us know. kcoolmans@gmail.com. If you let us know ahead of time, we'll try our best to maybe somehow, some kind of way hang out with you. All right, everybody, that is it. Please join us on any other of our other shows that we have coming up. And until then, good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you are listening to or watching this, goodbye and stay toasty.